I don't know if you heard of that, Jackie. Yesterday I actually just had a Reiki session, which is just energy healing. And which is a very, very fascinating thing. I've never had that done on me before. Like I've heard of a lot of people have like energy treatments and everything. Whereas for me, like this is distance as well. So I literally never met the person. We had an hour chat the day before. But then she just asked me like what I wanted to work on. And for me, personally, it's the toughest for me to actually be still and calm my mind down, which is why like people always say you got to meditate, you got to breathe, you got to do all of these things, and it was very, very hard for me to do so. And I've done tried that since I was like 13 years old, trying to meditate and everything. The best I got out of it was probably like 3 seconds or 5 seconds of like stillness, and then I'm like, ah, okay, I gotta move on, I gotta do other stuff. So I've always been in the pursuit of trying to figure out how to actually calm my mind, because the more we can calm our mind, the easier it is for us to be able to see our thoughts and be able to process the information that's coming up, which is why the bucket list is so useful, because like you putting all your thoughts on the wall so that you can see it from the outside in. That's essentially what we should be doing in meditation, is to be able to let all the thoughts flow through so the mind can process it. Um, so that's the main thing that I want to work on, is finding more stillness in stillness, right? So I'm not doing anything, I'm still, and I want to get my mind to be just as still as my body is. And that was my main intent. So when she started working on me, it was fascinating that for the first 10 minutes, I was like, same thing. It was hard for me to actually get still. But then after like 15 minutes, all of a sudden my body just started like calming down. And I was like, whoa, I started feeling like heat in my neck and my back. I was like, this is fascinating, because that's where my two biggest injuries were. Like I dislocated my right shoulder, which is very, very close to my neck, and I had chronic neck pain since I was like 13. And my lower back, I've had degeneration since I was 13 years old as well. And it was always aching. And that's where I started feeling heat. I was like, that's a very, very fascinating piece of information. Um, and then 20 minutes in, I lay down on the ground. I was just like resting. And then all of a sudden, my thoughts, like, as usual, like there's so much like stuff in my head. Where I was thinking about relationships, thinking about money, thinking about like how to not think about relationships and money and all of that type of stuff. And then all of a sudden, like within 5 minutes of that, all my thoughts just went and filtered to one thing, and that was um, constantly thinking that I needed to be somewhere where I didn't need to be yet. So I was always thinking about the future, planning about, oh, when is my next appointment? What do I need to do for that? What do I need to talk about and all of that type of stuff, instead of being in that moment and just being more present. And we hear that all the time. You know, people are like, yeah, you got to be present. You got to, listen to people. You got to be fully engaged with them. And that's always been like, yes, of course, like it's common sense. We need to be present when we're talking to people. But I never really felt that I truly was most of the time. So even like, for example, training my sessions, like I'm engaged with my clients, but then a text would pop off and I'd be like, what is that? And then come back to training my client, instead of, hey, actually like being fully engaged, whatever excess noise is out there, like I don't listen to it, because I'm actually present and enjoying that time training my clients or speaking to my friends or whatever it is. We get cluttered by all of that excess noise because we're thinking about the next thing. So essentially, we're not appreciating um, our current moment, because we're always thinking about the next thing is better, the next thing is more fun, the next thing is, what we need to plan for. And I'm like, no, like if you truly are appreciating what you're working, like what you're doing right now, then you are actually always having fun and being in a better state of flow. So that was like my main theme of like that session. And then after the session, what was fascinating is her outlook on it was incredible, because like she was explaining the chakra systems, which is essentially we have different energy systems within the body. And so she mentioned like my chakras that were balanced was my sacral, my heart, and my third eye. So the sacral chakra is talking about emotions, and talking about adaptability and flow. So like whatever setbacks come to you, like you're able to, oh, like see that and be like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. Like if that didn't work, we can do other stuff. I'm like, I've always been really good at that, like making stuff up as I go. Like that's essentially how I've always lived my life. The heart chakra is love and appreciation for things. And I'm like, yes, 100%. I have a lot of that, especially now since I met Nikki. It's like, it's just coming together, The third eye is intuition and like sensing things. And I'm like, I've always been pretty good with that. You know, like since I was a kid, I could look at someone like, oh, I don't like that person. Something's off with them or whatever it is. And oh, sorry. There we go. My camera just switched off. So intuition is something I was always had and I love developing. But then she mentioned like the slightly blocked chakras were my root chakra, which is security, money, all of those things. And I'm like, okay, that is very, very true. Like I've always been fearful of like losing money or like for the gyms, like, am I not making enough? How can I pay Ryan? Blah, 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 all of those things. Solar plexus is the confidence chakra, which is essentially like, um, you know, how you perceive yourself. And there's always setbacks in my mindset of like, yeah, I'm really, really good at making content and doing this, but like, will people enjoy watching it? Will people do this? Or like the way I'm training is like certain sessions are great. Like I can poke on one muscle and pain is completely gone. And then come another client, I'm like, shit, it looks like a simple case, but I can't help you. Like, oh, it really, really frustrates me. So like the confidence is like always like imbalance, you know? And then the throat chakra is communication and self-expression. And I'm like, yes, like in certain times I'm really, really good at communicating. But a lot of the times with my clients, I have really cool breakthroughs and stuff. But then personally, like it's terrible. Like, especially like talking to my parents or something like that. Like we just on such different frequencies that it's very, very hard for me to have full-on conversations with them that we can actually get along, which is fascinating. So those are like the conflicts of my chakras that were blocked. And the main thing that's like honing in on all of it was the crown chakra, which is essentially what connects you to a higher spirit, whether it's God, whether it's energy, whether it's whatever it is. And I was like, okay, that's fascinating, because since I was a kid, I was always um, disconnected with a specific religion. You know, I've studied so many, from Buddhism to Hinduism to Christianity. Like I was I was raised in a Catholic school, but there was a lot of these teachings I agreed with it, but I could never fully commit to one of them. And I felt like, huh, okay. And then the more I studied it about energy and quantum physics and all of that type of stuff, like all of these are like there, but I haven't fully like surrendered to any one of them or chose a specific religion or spirituality. And that was like the main conflict that's also creating imbalances between all of this. And this is through someone I never met, that she found all of these little things, which is fascinating to see that some people can sense these things and channel that energy through, because ultimately it's what we're exuding, right? At a very, very passive and subconscious level, we all exude some type of energy. Just like when we go to therapy and stuff, people can see restrictions, or like when you're not saying something, energy is blocked, you know, or when you want to express something but you don't know how, that's also a trapped energy that your body's not able to let go. So having these little pieces of information from someone looking from the outside in helps you analyze your own thoughts and figure out like what you actually need to work on, which completely like made sense of, hey, these things that were blocked is actually the stuff we've been actively working on like for the last 5-6 years. And then someone just pinpointed, be like, this is actually exactly what you need to work on. I was like, huh, that is really, really interesting. And that was essentially just like my win in an hour that I figured a lot of that stuff out, which is fascinating, because a lot of times we need help from someone else to say what they see. Like essentially it's calling you out on your own bullshit, because like I've always needed other people to tell me like, hey, like you're good at this, but this is stuff you need to work on. I've never had as many people in my life that could call me out on my bullshit, which I appreciate that. That's pretty awesome. Um, yeah.
I'm glad we told you.
Oh, there's a lot of
Someone
feedback.
got
Oh,
some pots and pans drumming in the background there.
I think audio.
No, I just said, oh, I'm glad we called you out. And
Yeah, Jackie, like, what are your thoughts on that? I'd love to like hear your feedback on like what you think is happening and like how you can help other people progress and everything too.
Which part of that? Because you just said like a few different topics that, and like I could talk for a whole thing
Yeah,
about.
well, whatever like comes to mind.
Um, Can I share about what, because I had a phone call just before I hopped on this call. That's why I was a little bit late.
Hmm.
You want me to share about that? I think that one actually is pretty important and relevant for a lot of people right now.
Sure.
It's based more on like compassion and forgiveness and being proactive about stuff. And so last week, for Thoughtful Thursdays, I like the name, by the way, we talked about, the fuck it list and happy, better, both, and better decision making, and basically how to like declutter your mind of the stresses that you're putting on yourself by worrying too much, right?
Hmm.
And I was actually just on a phone call this morning. I got like this, phone call from a friend of mine who, she just called me in distress, and she was like freaking out because she and her boyfriend got in this huge fight and have never fought before, and everything was great before, and then everything just blew up last night. And like super, super, super bad. And to the point where she was just like, I don't understand why he wants to go back to his family, back in New York. And, I want to stay here because this is where the work is going to be when all this, the virus stuff lifts up, and she's like, I don't even want to be in this country, but the only reason why I'm here is because of him and this and that kind of thing. So she was just kind of freaking out. And she was telling me about the fight that they had last night. And she was just giving herself a really hard time. Like, she was just self-deprecating, right? She was saying how she deserves to be left. She deserves to be like treated like crap. She deserves to be hurt right now. She deserves to feel like shit because of how she behaved last night, right? And this is something that people will do to themselves after they fuck up, right? After they make a mistake, after they've done something bad, right? Something that they regret, something that they didn't want to do, something that was just ugly to them, right? They feel bad about it, and then they are like, oh my gosh, I deserve everything that's coming to me. And it's all bad stuff that they're thinking about. And my thought about this was, yeah, maybe you did something terrible. Maybe you guys had a really bad argument, bad fight, and things got out of hand or whatnot. But like, it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, right? It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you made a mistake, right? We're all human. And if we keep that in mind, it's a little bit easier to forgive ourselves and have compassion for ourselves for the things that we do that are ugly, right? So what I mean by that is, number one, like, first of all, like for her, she couldn't understand from her boyfriend's standpoint of why he wanted to go back to his family in New York. Because she grew up where blood family had no meaning, right? Blood family for her had no meaning, and she just doesn't really quite understand why he would want to go back to his family. And so, because I've known her for years, and I'm like, okay, well, let's think about it this way. I know you don't understand him and why he wants to go back to his family so badly right now, but think about it this way. Family is not necessarily who you are blood related to, right? Family is your support system, right? Because you have your chosen family, you have your blood family, right? Chosen family is the support system that you've chosen in your life that you want to have around you. These people that that you can go to at any time when things get bad. When things are good, you want to go to them too. Like, they're your support system. That's your family, right? They're your circle of friends. They're your best people, right? They don't have to share a bloodline with you. They don't have to share any DNA with you. They have to share anything with you. You just chose them because they're your support system, right? And so for her support system was her friends, right? So she didn't understand why his family was so important to him, because her family had never been important to her. So I brought up to her, like, well, he grew up with blood family being his support system. So it's kind of like your chosen family, your support system as your friends, why you would want to go back to your friends in times like this where you feel so isolated and alone and nothing going on. that maybe that this way you can like at least a little bit empathize with him, because she was having a very difficult time relating to him of why he wanted to do that, right? She's like, I don't understand. I feel like a heartless bitch. She's like, I feel bad. I'm like, well, don't feel bad. It's just you don't really quite understand it yet. So I just helped her understand that first so that she can communicate with him a little bit better, a little bit more like level-headed. Second thing was she was feeling bad of how she treated him during the argument, right, during the fight. And she was like, I deserve to feel like shit. I deserve for him to leave me. I deserve all this. I deserve blah, 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 blah. And she was really scared, you know, that he was going to leave her and what happens and this and that and the other thing. And I told her, I'm like, you know what's going to happen if you keep going down this path of you deserve stuff is that you are going to go down this spiral, this downward spiral into this dark, fiery pit of hell. And you're not going to get yourself out because all you can think about is that you deserve the worst, right? And the thing is, you have to remember that we're human, right? We're human and humans make mistakes. That's what we do. It's in our nature to. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. Even if you're not human, you'll still make mistakes, right? We all watch those like funny animal videos where like the penguins trip and we all have a good laugh, or, you know, the cats miss a landing and we have a good laugh at that, or whatever, right? Everybody makes mistakes. And the thing is, if you dwell on the mistakes and you think that you deserve the worst because you made a mistake, you're going to keep going down this endless downward spiral of hell. And you're not going to get yourself out. So the key is to have compassion and forgiveness for yourself. You can still feel like shit if you want to. You can feel bad for what you did. That's great. That's fine. But don't get caught up in it, right? Like, okay, maybe you did something bad. Okay, you can feel bad about it. That's fine because you're human and you have a heart, right? You didn't treat someone very well. Okay, you feel bad about it. Great, you have a heart. Feel it. That's fine. But don't get caught up in it. Right? Don't get caught up in it, because once you do, it's very difficult to get yourself out of that pit. And so compassion is something, compassion and forgiveness is something that is, I think, extremely important, and it's a skill for many people to practice, to learn and to practice in order to be effective at it. But it starts from, you know, just doing it. I learned last night that a friend of mine in LA, he had his car broken into. He is currently working at the VA, the emergency room, and he's specifically doing, he's at the COVID testing place. He's at the COVID whatever labs or whatever it is. He's working with COVID, right? And he's doing that specifically right now. His car got broken into, and the only things that the people stole were his N95 masks and his medical gloves, his PPE, the things that were protecting him from, you know, getting infected. Those were the only things that they took. Obviously very targeted. And so he was interviewed on the news for this, and he said very positively and very calmly and very like, just this is how it is, like type of style. He said, you know what, times are tough right now. Everyone's kind of a little crazy. So I totally understand why they did it. You know, I get it. I understand. And watching him say that on camera, you know, it's different when people write it down, because when you write stuff, you can think about it. You can like, you know, just, you know, prepare and delete, and type, delete, and change your mind a bunch of times. But he said it on a live interview with the news, that he's like, you know what, I totally get it. Everything's fine. You know, like people are, you know, struggling right now for cash. And I know that these things are worth a lot of money, probably if they're going to sell it, you know, but I understand why they did it, you know, and he was totally compassionate about it, and that he forgave them. Does it make it right that the people did that? No, absolutely not. He still filed a police report, right? Because that still needs to happen, because those people did something wrong. However, he had compassion and forgiveness for those people, because if he didn't, he would still feel bad, right? There's no purpose, there's no reason for you to feel bad about something continuously, right? Especially if it was somebody else, right? And even if it is you, there's still no reason to continue to feel bad about something that you did. You can rectify it, right? And so in his case, his rectification is you know, filing the police report and letting the police handle it, because there is still that legal part of it, and somebody needs to pay for the windows and the cleanup and all that kind of stuff or whatever. But he's not going to feel bad about it. He's not going to have any hatred towards those people. He's not going to like be, you know, like vengeful or whatever, because it doesn't do him any good. It doesn't serve him at all. So we can learn from that, and we can do the same things with ourselves. Anytime that we do something that is not nice or not pretty, or basically we just made a mistake, right? We behave in a way that we don't want to. We can reflect back on it, and we can say, hey, yeah, that wasn't, I didn't like what happened there. I don't like what happened there. So what do I do about it? Okay, how do I make it better? How do I make it so that next time I don't get myself in that situation again? Because I don't like what happened. I don't like the me that was there. I don't like what I did. So what can I do next time to prevent myself from getting in there? You know, or also, what can I recognize in myself that if I start to get in that place again, how do I recognize it, stop myself, and get out of there? You know, like something for me actually happened just a couple weeks ago. I started realizing that I was doing a lot of emotional eating. I'm like gaining a lot of weight. It's all puffiness, right, from the carbs. I was just a snack monster, right? And I realized that, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good. And I realized it while I was doing it, and I didn't feel bad about myself. I didn't give myself a hard time. I just recognized that that's what I was doing. And I removed myself from the situation, just kind of looked at it like from a third party view. And I was like, oh, I'm emotional eating. This isn't good, right? So I didn't feel bad about it, because that's just what I was doing, right? There's nothing bad or wrong about emotional eating. It's just what I did, right? It's just something that I did. I also knew that I didn't want to continue that. So I removed myself from that situation. I was just like, okay, why am I emotional eating? Right? So at first I was like, okay, well, let me just stop this emotional eating. Let me see if I can just control it. And it wasn't getting me anywhere, because I wasn't getting to the root cause of it, right? Because I'm just like, okay, let me just stop this one thing. And then I started realizing, the more I thought about it, the more I meditated about it, the more I just kind of stepped back from it and observed the feelings. It's like, oh, there's something underlying for the reason why I'm emotional eating, right? So boredom eating, by the way, is emotional eating. So at first I thought it was just boredom eating, and then I'm like, wait a second, no. There's a reason why I'm eating when I'm bored, and it was actually anxiety. Okay, so I have a history of anxiety issues. I'm like, oh, okay, so there's something that's still unresolved there. And so once I realized that, because I had compassion for myself and was able to be a third-party observer, I was like, oh, okay, so there's an anxiety issue that's still there that I need to address, that I need to work with. And because I'm understanding about it, I'm compassionate about it for myself, I don't feel bad about it. That's really one super important thing as far as handling stress, is you don't put more stress on top of yourself, right, by feeling bad about yourself, right? So I didn't feel bad about myself for it. But, you know, I was a very forgiving and a very compassionate. And because of that, I was able to think about things in a very rational way. And it's like, okay, now I'm actually making progress, and I can actually help myself. Because when we involve ourselves too much in the emotions, when we get caught up in the emotions, it's very difficult for us to be able to help ourselves, because we're too close to the problem, right? And that's why, like, in emergency rooms, they don't allow like family members or whatever when the patient's getting rolled in there, because, you know, the families are too emotional, they're too close to it, and they freak out, right? You need somebody who's more level-headed, who's more away from the problem, to be able to help. Okay. And so with us, we can train ourselves to be that third person for ourselves. It does take time, it does take effort, and it does take consistency and practice, but you can get yourself there. And Andy was talking about meditation and how to meditate, and how it took him forever to figure out how to meditate and find the stillness and that kind of thing. I'm another one of those people. I've been trying to meditate for years, and I used to not be able to sit still for more than like a minute. That's not even exaggerating. Like I couldn't sit still at all. Like I had to keep moving, I had to keep busy and all that kind of stuff. And even with the mental stuff, like need to keep busy, like something just needs to continue to happen. And it was very difficult for me to find the stillness. But I just kept trying it. I kept trying, and I tried different ways, and I didn't put any pressure on myself to do it, because I realized that I'm like, if I put pressure on myself, then it's never going to happen, because that's just kind of defeating the purpose. So I would just try it intermittently here and there and just try different things. And so I found things like movement meditation and music meditation and like food meditation, like all these kind of things, because meditation is basically just being able to focus. It's being able to focus on one thing. And depending on what you're trying to focus on, it can be focusing on movement, right? So it's basically, you're just not allowing the distractions to get to you. You're able to still kind of focus. So you're paying attention, right? It's bringing attention towards things. So if you want to meditate while you move, that just means you're being very mindful and aware of your body and your movements. If you want to be meditative while you eat, that means you're paying attention to your food, right? How the food tastes, how the food feels, how the food makes you feel, you know, all these different types of things. How does the food look? You know, all these different things. These are considered as different types of meditation. And once I understood that, I'm like, okay, well, this is a lot better, right? And then eventually I found a couple things that allowed me to experience complete stillness of mind and just completely be in the now. And the couple things that I found for myself were on accident. One of them was playing this, it's a West African harp. It's called a kora. A friend of mine introduced me to it, and once I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing's amazing. And I went to visit this friend to go watch the solar eclipse, right? And he had this kora, and then we brought the kora out to the park to watch the solar eclipse. I completely missed the solar eclipse because I was just playing the instrument the entire time. Like that's how much into it I was. Like the rest of the world just did not even matter. So that was the first time that I experienced that, like that bliss where like nothing else mattered. The second time I found myself in that spot was when I went free diving. And the whole reason why I went free diving was because I wanted to overcome a fear of open water and being able to like hold my breath underwater. And so I took a free diving course when I was in Taiwan, and it really forces you to have to calm yourself down and just kind of block things out in order to be able to free dive, because otherwise you can't go very far at all. And so there was one time during that whole course where I experienced just like nothing else in the world mattered. And at that time I could, you know, see all the wonders of the underwater world, right? And it was actually really, really cool. And so since those two times, I was like, okay, let me just try to recreate these experiences and see if I can get back to that state, because I've had a taste of it. I know what it's like. Let me see if I can get there by myself. So I would do things like, well, I bought a kora, so then I started playing that, and that certainly helped, right? Because the more often you can get to that state, even if it's just a little bit, the more your brain and your body recognize it, and they're like, oh, okay, this is more and more familiar. This is more and more familiar. As far as the free diving, it's very dangerous to go free diving by yourself, by the way, so don't do that. But what I would do is I would go snorkeling by myself, but with no snorkel, just the mask. So whenever I travel, like usually I save a few days at the end to go on a like short little vacation for myself before I come back, because they're typically work trips. And sometimes I would go to places that are like islands or beach and whatnot. And what I would do is I would just bring my mask, right? Bring like snorkeling mask or goggles or whatever, swim goggles or whatever it is, even if it's in a pool. And what I would do is I would practice free diving in very shallow waters, right? And that totally helped, because I would have that, I would have some type of a focus point of like a goal to see if I can, let me see if I can just explore the bottom of the pool, right? Let me see if I can like see how many fish there are underwater. Let me just, kind of do that. And I would have to do that with breath holding. And in order for me to breath hold, I have to calm down. And those were two different strategies that I used in the initial stages to help me figure out like how to get to that point, that point of just like stillness and that bliss. And so it was like a not frequent, but it was a regular effort and consistency that got me to the place where I'm now, where I can actually sit for like an hour and not move for an hour and actually be at peace and be at like stillness and just kind of observe myself and feel and just be in the now. And it's so absolutely amazing. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I was able to realize that my emotional eating, or my boredom eating, right, was actually emotional eating, which normally, like, just from my studies, that's typically what it is. But the emotion behind it was anxiety, and the emotion behind the anxiety was actually fear. And so I was able to figure that out for myself just because I was able to remove myself from the situation more and more and more. But it comes with practice and it comes with training. And if you're not able to do it yourself yet, you ask somebody else to help you. You ask somebody else to call you out, right? I have a coach, right? Like, I'm in the movement and the rehab industry. Like, I teach people how to do this stuff. Like, I teach the people who teach people how to do it. Like, I'm the teacher of teachers, right? And I have clients too. And yet I have a coach. I have somebody that will hold me accountable, that I pay every single week to basically babysit me and tell me, do your shit, because I need that. I know that I need that. And because if I do it myself, and I'll try this periodically, I'll try to see like, oh, how's my discipline now? And I'll see like, okay, let me try this for a week by myself to see how I do. And then I'll realize again that I'm like, oh, nope, I still need help. And then I'll, go back to my coach and I'll be like, hey, yeah, it didn't work. I need you again. And he basically just, all the stuff that he tells me to do, I know that I need to do it, but it makes it easier for me that I don't have to think about it. And it's someone that holds me accountable for it. And he's very honest. He's very just calls me out and say, hey, you got to do it this way, or your technique's a little bit off or whatever. But he basically just calls me out, and he's there to help me. Right. So everybody needs a coach. I'm a firm proponent of that. Everybody needs a coach. And the best coaches that you'll find out there are the ones that have coaches themselves, because nobody can get to the top without help. Right? Nobody can get to the top without help. So if anybody thinks that they're better than help, right, that they can solve the world's problems, that they don't need any help, they're going to get stuck. They're going to get stuck at a place where they can no longer get any more improvement, because you're limiting yourself. Right. And that's one of the reasons why I love collaborating and getting together with people, no matter who they are, just to share different ideas and thoughts, and even just to hang out and work out or whatever it is because everybody has different perspectives of things. And even if we all know the same stuff, we don't all remember all of it at the same time. So we can bring up stuff that we already know and oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. That's great. Let's try to incorporate that in, because if you know a lot of stuff, which everybody knows a lot of stuff, you don't remember all of it at the same time, but it's all useful, right? So it's good to have people to just kind of remind you about that too. And so even if you're trying to meditate and get to that point of stillness, it's good to still practice yourself and to get together with other people to see if there's other things that you can do or things that you can bring back from before, different approaches. It's all great stuff.
Cool. Let me jump in there for a second. So while Jackie was talking, my brain likes to find formulas, because talking about conversations like these is good to expand the mind, but then it's very hard to start somewhere. Right. So a formula that I just started thinking about is that one, we all need something to anchor to, as in a coach or someone that can call us out on our bullshit, or someone that can just guide us. When religion, that's what we have, priests, that's what we have, other people that help us think about things in a slightly different way, or make us expand our current way of thinking. So we need to be able to attach our thoughts to something. So for example, if we're emotional eaters, like there's, like we have to first realize that we're emotionally eating, to be like, why, like I'm eating so much food, what the hell's going on? Someone else might say, why are you eating so much food? You'd be like, I don't know. Okay, that's something to know. Write that down and be like, okay, is this something that I actually want to work on? And if it is, you have to ask yourself, how is it affecting you? Right? Because if you don't know that it's actually affecting you, or you haven't even thought about how it's affecting you, you're not going to realize that it's actually a problem. So when you realize that, oh, okay, it's actually affecting me in this way, it's making me feel like crap, I'm getting anxiety if I eat too much, or like when I eat so much, I'm so full and I'm gaining weight and all of that type of stuff. Like those are things that's actually affecting you. And it's got to be strong enough for you to be like, huh, maybe this is something that I actually need to work on. And just like Jackie said, like if you just stop eating bad foods and stuff like that, it's probably not going to work. That's why, like, it doesn't work for anybody. It's just why it's so difficult for the entire world population. So we need guidance on that. So once you realize, hey, this is something I want to work on, I need help. Whether it's finding a nutritionist or talking to a therapist or a priest or anybody who can help, or a trainer that can guide you to be like, okay, this is how it's affecting you. This is what you want to change. What are the couple of things that you can do right now that's going to help stimulate this? Whether it's through exercise, whether it's through breathing or meditation, or just taking a nice long walk and then helping your own thoughts fuse together to figure out like how it is best for you to clear that situation. So when someone else can help you realize that and then guide you through it, then your own thought patterns start changing. Then you'll be like, oh, like I don't want to eat so much anymore. Like that emotional trigger was gone. So for Jackie, it was anxiety and fear. Like once that fear is gone for that specific case, then it comes back to the eating where you naturally just don't want to eat that much anymore. That, in my opinion, is like true habit change, when you don't have to force yourself to do something. It just naturally happens because we're breaking that cycle. So whatever we can anchor to help that other person analyze our thoughts, for them to break the current cycle that we're in, that's what's going to create true change and a lifestyle thing. But it takes a lot of practice, and it all comes down to being present again. So that's why I was struggling so much, because I struggled to be present. And like as Jackie mentioned, is like when you're present, you're in that state of flow. And when you're in that state of flow, everything makes sense, and you always essentially doing the right thing, and whatever you want to focus on, you are actually able to focus on it. So being present with your eating. So instead of just mindlessly like eating food or whatever it is, it's like, no, really taste the food that you're eating. It's like, have experiment with the texture. Like, is it crunchy? Is it soft? Like, touch it with your hands and see like, what does it actually feel like when you eat this food? Does it actually bring you happiness, or is it just something that we're eating? When you're exercising, is it like just getting the heart rate up, or is it feeling the muscles, feeling what you want to engage and enjoying that specific movement? And if you don't enjoy it, what other movements can you do that can make it feel better? Whether it's a completely different sport or exercise or whatever it is, experiment with those things. Like for Jackie, she found the state of flow through freediving. And guess what? She had a coach to teach her how to do that, so that she's actually able to do it safely. So she had that coach to anchor to, that helped her figure out what was going on in her mind while she was freediving. So we all need that, and finding whatever is pulling you. We all have that intuition. You're like, you know what? I feel like this is going to help. Whatever that is, write it down and immediately take action to be like, you know what? This is the thing that I want to work on the most. Who can I ask for help in this specific case? Whether it's a coach or a therapist or, a different whoever, like whatever you can come to mind that might be able to help you guide you in that right direction, anchor to that, and then start taking immediate action from there. Um, and then, yeah, and yeah, the toughest part is actually actively asking for help and admitting that I actually do have a problem, because we all like to think that we're these perfect human beings, that, oh no, I'm working on this, I'm fine, like, I can do this, that's totally fine. If I wanted to stop, I can. Every single one of us has some type of excuse to think that we're okay and we don't need to take that action. But when you actually ask yourself those questions again, it's like, hey, do I have a specific issue that I want to work on, and how is it affecting me? If you've like ask those two questions to yourself and be like, hey, it's actually affecting me in X, Y, and Z, work on the ones that's affecting you the most, that will probably give you the biggest impact for everything else. And that, I feel like, is something easier to attach to, if that makes sense. Does anybody want to add on something?
I've got something, but I want to let anyone else talk first.
Well, what I've learned throughout my years being a supervisor, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You're going to be involved in stress through your daily life, your employment, your relationships, and you learn how to deal with it. And you got to learn how to also recognize how the individuals you were involved with deal with stress also. Because not everybody deals with stress the same way. I was the type that I thrived on issues that involve stressful situations, but that's just the way I was. The more I had to handle during the day, the better I liked it, even though it was stressful. But also, as a supervisor, I would recognize, okay, this individual can only handle so much stress, and you handle them differently as opposed to someone who is over here and can handle 3 or 4 different situations that are stressful. And you need to learn how to recognize what you can handle and what other people you deal with can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I agree with Jackie that says that everybody needs help with stress. I consider myself pretty able to deal with stress, but you get to a point where you're like, okay, that's enough. I'm tired. I can't handle it anymore. You need help. And Jackie hit that point perfectly. I agree with that.
Awesome. Yeah, like realizing that is the hardest thing, because before I used to think I was the most level-headed person, because like everyone that I talked to, I'm like, oh no, this person's crazy. Oh no, that person's crazy. I was in a lot of toxic relationships as well. I'm like, oh no, she's crazy. Like she was doing all of these things, and I was like, at the end, I'm like, yes, she's got her shit too. Like she's got a lot of emotional stuff. But then when I looked back at myself, I'm like, it's not just her. There's a trigger. Like I was triggering a lot of those things, and it was the way that I was having my own stress that I wasn't able to express in a way that I wanted to. Then you have that clash of conflict. And that's the same with my parents, like because they think so differently than I do. We're raised in completely different cultures, like they're Taiwanese by blood. Everything is money and respect. Whereas when I was born in South Africa, like I was raised in a different culture. Like we're born in the same family, but all my friends were raised in the Western culture. So I saw that it was mainly family love and all of those things that I actually didn't get in my personal family. So there was this clash and a whole different way of living life. Like watching Americans live versus watching South Africans live is two completely different things versus in Taiwan. And I'm exposed to all 3 cultures, and I'm like, I was a lost individual because there's so many cultures that I could anchor myself to, but I didn't know where I fit until I figured out that none of it was my culture. Like my culture is me, of how I was thinking, and I can choose the culture that I want to be a part of, and that will make me me, right? So when I started realizing that, it's easier for me to see other people from where they're standing. And like since I was like 13, it was hard for me to communicate with my parents. It's still tough now, but it's much easier now that I know who I am and I know who they are, that we can actually come to specific terms. Like there will always be conflict, but it's how you deal with that conflict is completely different. And the more I learn, the more I find out about myself, the easier it is for me to resolve conflict with my parents, with my relationships, with everybody else, which is a very, very fun journey if you choose to make it fun and enjoy the
Yeah.
process of like learning about how your brain is actually working and thinking and stuff.
Yeah, the way that I like to think about it is like during our childhood, we're all given roadmaps. Like we form these roadmaps to the world. It's kind of a concept that if you guys have read like Seven Habits, Stephen Covey,
Yeah.
yeah, he talks about the roadmap idea, and we need to wonder whether we have the correct roadmap. And we're given roadmaps for communication, we're given maps for navigating the world, for understanding of where we fit and what we deserve. Like that deserving part is huge. But we need to take the time to question that roadmap. Like a lot of us go through life never wondering whether we were given the right map. And we we look at our parents and we're like, man, I never want to be like that person. Or we make all these judgments about our situation, about the world based on that map. And we need to kind of take the time to look at it and wonder again, like whether it's the right map. And I feel, since we were on the topic of meditation, my experience with it is that meditation is a practice of cultivating space between what happens or what you feel and your judgment of what happens, right? So there's what happens to you or what you do or whatever, and then there's a space between your judgment and reaction to that. And it's, for me, meditation is a practice of cultivating that space and gaining an awareness of that space, and recognizing where you can kind of change your roadmap a little bit. How are you gonna judge that event, if that makes sense?
Yeah, was a very interesting quote I heard yesterday. I think it was through Tiffany. She's just like, meditation is literally just increasing the space between thoughts. And I was like, holy crap, that is really, really good. Because ultimately, like when we're thinking, there's just so many thoughts that just come one to the next and all of it at the same time. But the more still you are, the more you're able to separate that. So the longer the space between is and thought, the more sense of stillness is over there. And it's funny enough that is essentially what heart rate variability is. It's like you have your heart rate that has the beat, and the space between that. The better the space, so the more evenly distributed or the longer it is, essentially the better your heart rate variability is, which also relates directly to overall health, longevity, recovery, and stress reduction and stuff. So I'm like, if we can increase the space between our heartbeats and we can increase the space between our thoughts, like everything will naturally just start collaborating a little bit better. Yeah, David, do you have anything to add? I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
No, I mean, I think it's good. Like you said, I think I'm poor at meditation and poor at being able to separate myself, I guess, from, like many of you, my mind is always constantly thinking about something new, something I got to do next, something I got to work on. And like everyone, stress kind of never goes away. It's always changing. Mm-hmm. So like today, you might be stressed about whatever, the gym and finances and stuff. Let's say, boom, that was all solved. I guarantee there'll be something else that will stress you, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the key is being able to step back, right? Like Jackie was saying, and reflect from a third perspective, and being able to take that time. Just like you need to work out your body, you also need to work out your mind. Just like you need to rest your body, you need to rest your mind. And it's hard to do that, I think, for a lot of people these days. So.
Growth really only happens in the absence of input, because when you're always focused on processing new information, you're using that energy to process it or to take it in rather than to integrate it and to grow from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess, there's about 5 minutes left. I don't know if you guys want to share, like it doesn't have to be a very personal thing, but just something that you would like to work on, or something that you realize that, oh, okay, this is how I'm thinking. This is affecting me in a specific way that I don't want it to affect me. And what is your approach of progressing that aspect? Does that make sense? So I guess I'll go first. So for me, it's finding more stillness, as I mentioned in the beginning, is figuring out how to declutter my mind, but also focus on actually paying more attention and appreciating my current moment that I'm always in. So like not having to be on my phone and type and do 5 different things at once. It's just no, if I'm filming, I just film. If I text, I just text. That is like my biggest thing that I want to work on. And the main thing that I'm going to do actionably is to actively think about that a little bit more. So call myself out, like if I'm actually doing something and I realize that I'm slowly like weaning off and going to my phone and be like, oh, okay, I realize that. Let's not do that right now. Let's come back to this. Take a breath, calm it down, and then come back to whatever that I'm doing. I tried that a lot before, but I never really felt it. And now I'm like, I'm feeling what I need to do. And I feel like that is definitely going to be in the next approach. And if I see that that doesn't help, then I'll call someone to call me out on that and then help me with that a little bit more. Cool.
Yeah, I'll take it next. Biggest thing that I'm working on is taking action on the things that I feel that I want to do or things that I want to accomplish, or so many of us are like, yeah, I should do that, and then we never actually do it. So for me, really putting in the time and the effort to do the things that are genuinely important to me is something that I've been working on cultivating, whether it's stuff for work or stuff, like reaching out to friends, family more often, doing all the things that if I were to reflect back on my actions and what I have accomplished and done, would I be proud of it? And just seeking to live that model every single day.
Awesome. Oh, sorry.
What I've recognized is stress. We all know that at any age, it's just something negative and it's not healthy for us. And I think all of us are on the right track by being able to try to identify what it is we need to work on. And then what you mentioned, Ryan, actually getting to it and getting it, to a point to where I'm starting on this date and by, in a month, I want to be in this point. Give ourselves timelines and just simply assessing the whole situation. Sometimes we do something and we fail to assess it to see if it gave us a positive or a negative response. If it was positive, then we can feel it was the right decision and the right thing that we did. If we get a negative response at the end of our month journey or whatever timeline we give ourselves, if it's a negative response, we know, okay, I need to revisit this until I reach that positive place where I want to be. And I think all of us recognizing that. For myself, I hadn't exercised in years and I was a very athletic person, and I'm finding out that I don't know what was keeping me away from that, but now that I'm getting back to doing that, it helps. Your body has to be balanced with your mind and your activities and our stresses. Like Ruben mentioned, we're all going to have stress for the rest of our life. How we manage it is going to either be healthy for us or unhealthy. And what Jackie was saying, we don't want to get in that deep place where we're unable to get out of it. We want to be able to recognize it and get out of it and work back at it. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
Awesome.
Trying to complete that.
Love it.
Yeah, one of the things that I need to work on is realizing or not judging people for what they're stressing for, because everybody stresses for different things at different levels. Don't judge one like what, you're stressing out for that? Come on, that thing, bull. You can't do that. I mean, it's different for every individual, and recognizing the fact that someone's stress, it may not be yours, but honor it and help them out of it. That's it.
Love it. That's awesome. That's really great.
Andy, I have I think these have been really helpful. Like some feedback is I think that providing us with different techniques, like last week, you know, Jackie went over a bunch of really cool techniques, providing us maybe just suggestions or different techniques to think about. Like you said earlier, you were doing, or yesterday, I guess you said that you were doing Reiki or trying to meditate. We talked today about some of the different things people do. I think that's really helpful because everyone does it differently.
Yeah.
But having different tools in your toolbox to try to handle that, I think would be really helpful.
I got for this case. What should I call it to make it easier to remember? You basically, I think it's really helpful to just look at life and everything in life as a video game. I think like most of us have, Ryan's like, yes! He's like, yeah, that, right? I think most of us have played video games or have seen people play video games. And if we look at life like we're playing video games, I think it might be a little bit easier because it takes us away from the actual situation to make it a little bit less real, right? But then also, I think we can all think about like times where we were playing a video game and we got stuck some time in that video game. Like for me, the most memorable time, because I was absolutely terrible at video games when I was little, was Mario Brothers. The very, very first pit that you had to jump over, like I could never make it over there. That one, I was always like get stuck in that little pit, like right. And the thing is, if we look at it as if we look at life like a video game, and you know, like if we can't get over a pit, if we can't cross a level, if we can't, you know, beat the big boss or whatever, the small boss or whatever it is, it's like, what do? Do you get so upset that you like unplug your, I mean, you probably don't even unplug, you just like grab the gaming system, throw it out the window or whatever? Or do you just like, okay, let's try again. And maybe you're even more dedicated and committed to passing that level or beating that boss or jumping over that pit, right? You don't just like land in the pit and you're like, dang it, and then just stay there forever, right? You don't do that in a video game because you have to keep going, right? And sometimes you're like, okay, I've tried this level like 20 different times today. I need a break from it. Great, let's go up, let's go for a walk, let's do whatever, and then let's try again tomorrow, or let's try again later this afternoon or whatever. And so it makes it so that like we take life a little bit less seriously. And it's a little bit more fun, and it's more like, okay, it's no big deal, right? It's just a video game, let's try it again. So I kind of like that perspective of it, especially if you can't get to the point yet where you can see things from an outside third person perspective. Is just be like, okay, this is the video game of Jackie's life, right? This is the video game of, we'll call it the COVID game, right? We'll call it quarantine game, right? And we'll call it the, you know, I'm trying to do this project game, right? Whatever game it is, life is just a game. And then if you treat it like a game, it's like, okay, yeah, you can be frustrated sometimes, but like, okay, calm down. It's just a game. Let's reset and let's try it again.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That
I like that.
brings me to Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. And ultimately, like what they talk about is that life is literally a game, and the goal is not to win. You can't win at life. Like that's an impossible thing because we're all gonna die at some point. So the whole point of the game is to just keep playing, right? So that's the whole idea, is to keep finding different strategies to keep playing. Like you don't, like in a video game, you don't really die. Like when you die, you just restart the game. So you can take that game as in when you're going from one level to the next and you die between that level, don't think that you're dying in life. Just think that it's a segue for you to learn that that specific thing that you just did was not the right thing to do, and then keep moving forward and find another strategy around it, right? Those are the stressors, those are the puzzles, those are the little failures that we have in life. It's not a failure, it's just an attempt that didn't work. So you're trying it at a whole different way. So life is a game and keep playing it. So the biggest frustration when we're playing games is that when you do die, it's freaking awful. It's like sometimes like I want to throw my controller or break it or whatever it is. So in those states where you feel like so shitty, I feel like that's where David's trying to get to, is like in that specific phase of time when you're so anxious and angry or frustrated, what can you do as a quick strategy to calm down? So that's, I guess, yeah, we're over time, but let's spend the last couple of minutes that I learned this technique from Jackie is literally just this crossed hand technique, where just take your hands, you're gonna put one underneath the other, like cross it, and you're gonna bring it up to your chest. And you're gonna cross your legs as well. One leg over the other, it doesn't really matter the direction. And just lie back, relax, and then just breathe. And think that you're breathing into the chest, exhale. Just let your whole body sink down and melt into your low belly and stuff. And just breathe and exhale. So there's something really, really interesting about crossing arms and limbs, that essentially it's crisscrossing your left and right brain hemisphere, and also pulling things close to you is giving you a sense of safety, like you're being hugged and you're hugging yourself, giving yourself love, and being more connected to your body, which will help you become more present, right? So if you do this and you hold on to that specific thought that you're trying to let go of, like breathe that in, and then just work on processing that out. So you can do this any point in time of the day, right? Especially right now, you're at home. People won't think you're crazy if you're doing this, like during work and all of that type of stuff. But if you are back to work and you're in your office, like you can always step away, whether you're in a cubicle or in the bathroom, whatever it is, just do that, calm back down, let things reset. Because ultimately, when we're stressed, the only thing we need to do is take a breath, right? And this gives you an extra tool to force you to take a better breath. Does that make sense? I don't know if that helps a little bit more. So something like that can be really, really, really simple to be like, hey, I'm super stressed out. Back away from that conversation or that conflict or whatever it is. Give yourself a safe space. Do this. Breathe a little bit. Be like, okay, I'm realizing my thoughts. That is unnecessary. How can I think in a slightly different way that can go through this conflict a little bit better? Let it go, and then come back to whatever situation that you want to try and handle. Awesome. So I'm thinking, yeah, next week we can add more techniques like this, like really, really quick, fast strategies that might be able to help in different situations. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but that will probably be something we can play around with next time. And then Jackie, Ryan, and I will, try and figure out some other stuff that we can talk about. Awesome. Any questions, concerns, or takeaways so far? Good to go?